Motor racing comes in many forms. From the elite and technical to the amateur and comical, there is a racing formula for everyone. Nowadays, racing cars are adorned with multitudes of sponsors to rake in the cash, as motor racing is by no means a cheap endeavour. However, this was not always the case. In the early days of motor racing, teams often entered based on nationality and raced in their national colours. If you've looked at an atlas recently, you'll know that the amount of colours and the amount of countries isn't exactly equal, so not everyone was going to have their way. This is the story of how the nations got their racing colours. At the turn of the last century, motor cars were starting to gain ground as an effective method of transportation, and as with horses and chariots before them, people had started to race them. Though smaller point-to-point races were common in the very early days of the automobile, one of the first major international races to be held was the Gordon Bennett Cup, organised by, you guessed it, Gordon Bennett, an American newspaper baron. Unlike modern racing, where anyone with the financial means can enter a team, only major car manufacturing nations were invited to the cup, and their entries had to be painted in national colours, which are allocated by the organiser. For the first race in 1900, racing from Paris to Lyon, France were given blue, Belgium yellow, Germany white, and red for the USA. It's clear to see that not all these countries have stuck to their racing colours, but this original allocation is important, as it meant when other countries joined in the competition, they had to be a bit more inventive with their colour selection. It meant that when Great Britain entered the tournament, their national colours of red, white and blue were all taken. The company representing the UK, the Napier Corporation, had painted their cars in a shade of olive green. It was probably what was just lying around the factory at the time. However, this shade didn't last long. Slew and Edge won the 1902 race for Napier and thus granted the UK the privilege of hosting the race in 1903. However, the speed limit on the roads of Great Britain was a measly 12 miles per hour, and as a result, the organisers switched the venue from Great Britain to Ireland, then part of the United Kingdom, where the motor laws were a little more lax. The Napier cars that were representing the UK were painted a deep shamrock green in celebration of Ireland, and that deep green has been the racing colour of Great Britain ever since, appearing on many classic British racing cars such as Lotuses, Jaguars and Bentley. Like the UK, France retained their Gordon Bennett racing colours, with blue remaining the national racing colour of France to this day, and has been used proudly by the likes of Bugatti in racing competitions. However, Renault prefers to run in lovely yellow. For other countries, however, things have been a little more dynamic. Germany used white on their racing cars for nearly 30 years. However, in the 1930s, silver became just as popular, and today both colours are equally regarded as German racing colours. How silver came to be adopted has been lost to the annals of time. The legend states that at the 1934 Grand Prix at the Nürburgring, Mercedes and Auto Union cars failed pre-race scrutineering as they were just a kilo overweight. The German team stripped the paint off their cars, leaving the sheet metal exposed and allowing them to run within the regulations. This was the birth of the famous Silver Arrow, and Mercedes and Auto Union retain silver as their racing colours to this day. The USA dropped the use of red after the demise of the Gordon Bennett Cup, preferring to race with white bodywork over a blue chassis in the Le Mans endurance races. As the bodywork grew to encase the entire chassis, the cars were given blue racing stripes to help identify them. This marked the birth of racing stripes as a mainstay of the American hot rod aesthetic, though whether it's blue on white or white on blue remains up to the decision of the owner. Last but not least, we come to Italy. Italy competed in the 1904 Gordon Bennett Cup for the first time, with the cars decked out in black. The famous racing red, or Rossa Corsa, was not adopted until 1907 after the famous transcontinental Peking to Paris race. Held over a distance of 14,994 kilometers, drivers had to navigate their way from Peking, now Beijing, to Paris, with only a set of telegraph stations as checkpoints. Though 40 teams entered, only 5 showed up to the start line in Beijing, the others realizing that the cost and sheer enormity of the drive ahead of them were probably a little too great for them. Covering the full race could probably be its own video. However, we're stuck for time, so, long story short, the winner of the race was Prince Scipione Borghese, so confident in his abilities that he took a 1-hour detour on the race to have dinner with some friends, and he drove a red 7-litre Italia. Italy adopted Rossa Corsa as its national racing colours and has adorned some of the most iconic racing cars of all time. Though national colours have largely faded from the top tier of motor racing, their legacy is still widely recognised, with private teams often honouring their racing heritage by adopting traditional colours in one form or another.